Okay, we're going to go over the steps on how to create and get started with your tie down and tween parts of your walk cycle, or those stages of your walk cycle. Here I have my rough pass completed. The temporary layer that we created to duplicate the second half of this can be deleted. You can delete it out. So that is no longer needed. We can take that layer out. Hiding it's fine, but later we'll probably end up just deleting it anyhow. But I've got it here just as reference. So the next steps that we would do is create a new layer above our rough pass. We're going to call this our tie down. And here's an example of what this could look like. I'm going to turn this off here and that one. So here is a tie down. This is basically a refined version of our rough pass. So rough pass is still here, so you can see that applying, just using this as a reference. Some tweaks were made, some adjustments were made as needed to make your character the way you want it to be, kind of refine all the details, and kind of put those finishing touches on that guy. So that is adding in your tie down. So back to this one. With my rough pass, I'm going to go to create a new layer. I'm going to double click on that and call this one tie down. I'm just going to make it one word. And I'm going to start to use my rough pass as a reference. And so first thing I would want to do for that is take my rough pass and right click properties and lower the opacity down to something like 25 or so. Say OK. And I would lock that layer down to make sure you're not animating on that layer. Now on this one, this first frame on my tie down, I'm going to go through and start to actually refine my character and kind of build them up the way I want them to be. First part was just kind of get the basic movements right and body parts and scale right. This part is going to be about getting all the details in there the right way. So I know that I've got a brush selected here for certain parts. I'll be using a line tool for another part. You want to make sure that you're consistent with your brush size and whatever marks that you're making here from frame to frame. Otherwise, you're going to end up with line art getting bigger and smaller, and that can be distracting and not quite what you want from your character walk cycle. So starting with frame 1 here, I'm going to start to kind of put a little bit more attention and into my artwork and really start to refine my character the way I want him to be. And so I'll go through here and things can still be kind of tidied up later, but I'm getting a little bit more detailed in how I want this guy to look. So you can refer back to your turnaround also for your character. This is one that I've kind of been working with for a while, so I kind of understand how this character looks and how I want him to look. So kind of finish this guy out, at least this part of his head. And throw his eyeball in here. You can always go back, kind of tidy things up. You can erase certain parts, redraw them as you need to. So once you work on refining all that line art, go back a little bit nicer, a little bit more detailed, and make that character look as you intended them to be. So I'm going to go through these steps. And again, you can go back and kind of tidy some of this line work up even more after you get all the refining done. It's a good time to go back and kind of do the cleanup work and start to clean up your character. So kind of understand what's happening here, going through, making sure the proportions are right, making sure everything is going to be lined up exactly the way it's supposed to. So back to this one, and you're going to go do that for each frame. Now, once you get to the last ones, to kind of speed things up, you can do the same thing that we did with the rough pass. Do your first 4 frames, copy those frames, and bring them into a new kind of temporary layer and arrange them to the back of your timeline. That way you have references. That's what was done with this one. So did the first 4 layers here, then I copied those, and just like the rough pass part, copied those first 4 and then put them back here on the end of the timeline, and I used those as a reference for my new tied down. That way all of the line art was still there. I can basically just copy it straight over. The first 4 to the last 4, and because my character is pretty symmetrical, it works out where all I had to do was just edit the arms and legs and which parts were above and below the body layers. So that makes things a little bit easier and takes out a lot of that work, especially for that refining work. So this layer right here is essentially the exact same as one of the previous. Let's see, where'd he go? That one right there. So same thing, same line art, same body art, just switched the arms and the legs, the overlapping parts, and saved a ton of work on that. And you'll want to do that because the next step is to get into the tweening. And so we intentionally left spaces between each of these key poses. And so here's one that's been started. Working on the tweens, you want to fill in the gaps between your poses. So from contact to low, and then you'll see right here what the tween looks like. And you'll have to have your onion skin on so you can see this purple is that first frame. The green is the second key pose. And so right here, I created a new blank keyframe with F7, and I'm going to fill in, kind of split the difference between them. And you're going to fill in just directly into that, your refined tie-down artwork for your character. Okay, so this is going to take some time. It takes some practice to get this right. And it's probably one of the more time-consuming parts, because now you kind of have to actually look and figure out what's going to make that motion work. And so one thing that I would typically do is get the motions down right first. And so I can see the shoulder right here. So I would kind of split the difference here and put a new shoulder here. I can see the elbow. I would split that difference and that. So I'm taking kind of main points here. So I see the elbow here on this purple one. I don't see it on the green one. So I can decide whether or not I want to put that in there. But I can see this wrist. And what I could start to do, I start using the line tool as well, since I have a lot of straight edges on my character. And I think I'm using line 5 for this. Nope, that's a little bit too wide. Let's see, it's 3. And I'm going to start to connect the dots here. And basically, that still might be too big. Man, can't get that right. I think maybe it's 2. Let's get a 2 in there and see what that looks like. 2 looks right. So I'll take this and connect my dots, make my body parts kind of match up. I feel like this elbow or this wrist is a little bit too high. I feel like it should be somewhere down here more. So I'm going to redraw that there and then go back and make sure my body parts match up. So what you'll end up doing is filling in these gaps and kind of have one here. It's kind of mostly done, but if I turn off you can see that it makes your movements a little bit more gradual between those poses. So it's going to make it smoother in the end. So here's one where I mostly have the character finished as far as this first tween. And there's the first pose here. There's a second pose and my tweening layer right here. And so I see what I have to do to get that just right. And then I'm going to continue on for each of these other. Now I can do the same thing here with these tweens. You can copy those and use that as a reference for the last 4 tweens. You just have to flip those body parts around, right? So work on these stages here, your tie down and your tween stages, and this is probably going to be the most work intensive part of the walk cycle, and we'll be done, but everything should look really nice and smooth. So we'll see you next time once we get into color.